Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing fine. And guess what? Today we are going to bring one of the important topic in research, which is like thesis and article writing. And we are also going to talk about the styles of references like APA style, MLA style, Chicago and the Harvard system, right? So let's get started. All right. So when we are talking about a thesis, right, think of it as this big project you take on as a research student. It's a kind of like the grand finale of your research journey. In simpler terms, it's a detailed report where you dive deep into a specific topic, right? And you do some bunch of experiments or analysis and then share what you have found. Right. Now a thesis isn't just any old report. It's structured in a special way to make your findings clear and persuasive. Generally, it's split into four main parts. Right. First, you outline the problem you're tackling. Right. This is where you set the stage and get everyone on the same page about what you're investigating. And then next, you talk about the methods you use to explore this problem, like the steps you took, the experiments you ran, right, or the theories you tested. After that, you present your results, and this is where you lay out what you discovered. And finally, you have a discussion section. Here, what you do here, you get to explain what your findings means, how they fit into the bigger picture, and why they are important. But before you even start writing the main thesis, you usually have to write a thesis proposal, right? And this is like a sneak peek of what you plan to do. It's a good idea to use some of the material from your proposal when you're writing your thesis because that's what you're going to do, right? And when it comes to the actual writing, think of your thesis as a story you're telling. You have got a hypothesis, right? And that's your main idea or guess about what's going on with your topic. Then your job is to test this hypothesis through your research and experiments, right? These all steps we have already talked about in our previous sessions, right? So you get to be like a detective here, looking for clues and piecing together information to see if your hypothesis holds up. Right. So remember, a good thesis is clear and logical. You want your reader to follow your train of thought easily, right? Don't make them jump through hoops to understand your argument. So keep things straightforward and organized. And here's something interesting, guys. The word thesis can mean different things depending on where you are in your academic journey. If you're working on your bachelor's or master's degree, a thesis might be one part of your studies, right? But if you're going for a doctoral degree, then we usually call it dissertation. Either way, it's about showing off the research skills you have developed. Finally, a little kind of pro tip that I'm going to give, keep a detailed lab notebook if your thesis involves experiments. Right, and this is where you kind of note down every little things you do in the lab. Trust me, it's a kind of lifesaver when you're trying to remember what you did 6 months ago. So guys, this was all about this writing and thesis and article writing. Now let me tell you, very important, how you're gonna process these things, how you start. So the first thing in research or your thesis or dissertation, the first page called title page, and think of this as the face of your thesis. Your title should be catchy but also clear about what your research is about. Make sure you include your name, your supervisor name, and where you're studying and the date, basically who you are and what you're doing, right? And then next we have like certificate page. And what do you do here? By the name you can understand this is a bit kind of super important. It's where you say like, hey, this is my work and I've given credit to all the ideas and stuff I borrowed from others, right? It's all about being honest and upfront. Then the next page is about abstract, and this is a kind of mini version of your thesis. You need to squeeze in your research problem, how you went about it, like methodology, or the cool stuff you found, like your key foundings, right? And what it all means, like your conclusion. So in short, it should be like short and sweet, like 100 to 150 words, right? Not more than that. The next is acknowledgement. And what do you do here? Here's where you get to be kind of be grateful. Shout out to everyone who helped you, like your advisors, friends, any funding bodies if there is, and that helpful kind of librarian also that you can mention. Anyway, Next is table of contents. And what happens here? Think of this as a map of your thesis. List all the big and small section and where to find them. Don't forget to use those fancy lowercase Roman numerals for this front part. It's very important. So the next is your list of figures and also tables, right? So what happens here? Suppose you have got any cool graphs or table. What do? You list them here with their numbers, titles, and where they pop up in your dissertation, right? Next, we have preface. Very important part of your thesis that you should always mention. Like if you have done some teamwork or parts of your thesis, what you do here? Here's where you can talk about what you did, right? And then we have like chapters, which is like your core thing that you're gonna do or you have written, right? So in that you start with introduction, like it's a kind of setting the stage. Why is your research important? What's the big problem you're talking about? Mention some background stuff and what others have said about it. Lay out how you approached it and what makes your study kind of cool thing, right? And then we have like literature review in that particular chapter you can mention, right? Before you dive into your research, what you do, you got to know what's already out there. This is where you talk about all the readings you did and how it relates to your work. Next, we have research methodology. And what do you do here? It is like get into the nitty gritty of how you did your research. What methods did you use and how did you gather and plan to analyze your data, right? And next we have like data analysis, like we talked about this in our previous session, right? What you do here is where you crunch the numbers or whatever data you have, like primary, secondary, quantitative, qualitative, descriptive, whatever data that you have collected, right? So explain how you analyzed it and what kind of test you used, right? Then we have results and findings. We also talked about this particular step in our steps of research, right? And here what happened, it is a kind of show off what you found, right? Use graphs and table to explain and try to be clear about what your results are telling you. Then we have discussion. Of course, this is where what you do, you get to interpret your result, talk about why they are important and how they fit or they don't fit, right? And with what you expected or what others have found. Then we have conclusion. So in that chapters you can include conclusion. So what happens here, you look back at what your research problem and see how you did it. Did you answer your questions or how successful was your study based on what you set out to do, right? Then we have like recommendation. So what happens here, if there is more to explore, suggest future research paths here, and it's very important to mention that gives a little bit authenticity of your research, right? And then we have bibliography. And what do you do here? List every book, article, websites or tweets or posts or whatever you have used. It's all about giving credit and it's very important in dissertation, right? And then we have at the end appendixes. As in what is that actually? It is like got extra details like long calculation or extended data. Stick them in this particular section at the end and each one gets a letter like A and a quick introduction. And guys, that is all about your thesis writing. So now let me jump quickly about the article writing. It's very important. Suppose you have already written it, but it's time to write an article. And how do you write it? Well, so suppose you're getting ready to write a research article, right? And this is like telling the story of your research journey in a way that others can understand and maybe even repeat. So research articles are the real deal, straight from the source, and they're often the first place kind of new discoveries are shared. But before a journal says yes to your publishing article, what they usually do, they usually have other experts to check it out. And what they're called peer review, right? To make sure it's kind of your solid article, right? And let me walk you through all these, steps that you should do before writing article, right? The first thing is their title, right? And again, it is like naming your baby, right? You want a title that's clear and catchy, telling readers what your research is about. Then we have authors, like which is you, right? Or anyone else who helped to make this research happen, right? And then abstract. Think of this like a movie. Again, we talked about this. You have to mention here, it's a kind of short summary that gives the kind of glimpse of what you did, what you found, and why it matters. Then we can introduce introduction, like here's what you do. You set a stage here. You're telling your readers what the problem is, why it's important, and how your research fits into the bigger picture. It's like saying, here's why you should care about what I did. So right, so that is all about introduction here. And then next we have materials and methods. This is your recipe section. You'll describe all the steps, tools, and ingredients you have used, right? And it's important because it lets other repeat your experiment if they want to, right? Then we have results, and this is like big reveal. You're laying out what you discovered, usually with the data, numbers, and all that good stuff. It's just the facts. Here's now, and it's important, right? And then you can mention tables and graphs, and these are like the Instagram of your research. You're showing off your results in a way that's easy to see and understand. Then you can about discussion, and here what you do, here you become a kind of detective. And what do your results mean, and how do they fit into the bigger picture? This is where you interpret your findings and maybe even get a bit philosophical about what it all means, right? And the next we have acknowledgement. And what you do in the article, you also acknowledge people, right? This is where you give a shout out about anyone who helped you along the way but wasn't a kind of main player, but they have one way or the other they have helped you, right? So it's better to acknowledge, right? Then we have references, which can be your literature cited, right? This is your bibliography. You're giving credit to all the sources you use to back up your work. It's like saying, hey, I didn't pull this out of thin air. These folks kind of had my back, right? So this is all about article writing, guys. Next, we're going to talk about the styles of referencing, and it's very important if you're writing dissertation or if you're writing any thesis. So it's kind of very important, and we're going to talk about here APA style. Then we'll talk about MLA style. These are very important, especially in the perspective of exam, because every time they ask about one way or the other about the MLA or APA reference, right? And let me tell you about APA style first. Well, first off, let me tell you about the format guideline. Want an 11-inch paper size, very important, and 1-inch margin on all sides. And there should be a title page, a reference list, and a byline. And of course, use a font such as Calibri or Times New Roman. And this is very important, that you should follow all the format that they have mentioned, right? And there should be double space in the whole paper, right? That you can all do any writing software like Google Doc or Microsoft Word, right? And of course, the left hand side text alignment should be there, and so there should be an intent on the first line of each paragraph. It's very important because both in MLA and APA follow the same, right? And there are some differences that I'll talk about in MLA. But let me tell you about the basic references. APA in text, when you're citing a text, what do you do? So in this particular citation, it actually consists of the author's last name first, right? And then the year of publication. Like if a specific part of the source is cited, a researcher should cite a locator such as a page number or other. You can see through the example that I have given, like there is a writer, we don't know the first name, right? So we have put Smith, right? Smith 2020, remember the comma, page number 17, if you are citing a text, right? And then if there is multiple authors or corporate authors, citing sources with multiple authors or organization changes the in-text slightly. And how it happens, you can see the example. Like here is parenthetical citation, right? And it says Spivak and Jones. Remember that? Together, then comma, then 2020. If there is a page, then you can put, of course, comma, and then the page number, right? And I'll tell you more about it. This is all about text citation. Let me tell you about the book citation. Suppose if you're citing a book in APA format, what do? There should be author's name, especially last name, and then first initial. So publication date should be there. The title of the book should be in italic. Remember that. An edition of the book if there is, you should mention, and name of the publisher, very important, if there is any, of course. Then hyperlink, if you have the link or DOI number, you can mention that also. Example here, first what should be their last name, then there should be first name, remember the full stop, and then the date, and then the title of the book in italics, and edition also, and at the end publisher name. For example, you can see T Smith or Smith comma T, then the date is here 2020, then in italic form we have the title, the citation manual for students in a quick guide. Then there is edition also, like in bracket you can mention second edition, and then full stop and Wiley. Remember that. So this is your book citation. Right, suppose you are taking things from journals or periodicals, what do you do? So authors or author's name, first initial follow the surname, and publication of the article, right? So, or there should be title of the article. Let me tell you how you're gonna pull it out. So there is an example, right? So W. Andrew written this book, particular the evolving European model of professional sport finance, and then there is a journal which is in italic, right? And then the page number, and then we have the link, right? Hyperlink. So that is all about APA style. Now let's me tell you about if you're finding things from like internet or electronic sources. What do you do? There should be description of the format and the last name. You know, it starts with author's name, then the publication date like previously, then the title, then the description of format, right? And of course between square bracket what should be there, that the source was accessed electronically. Like for example, you can see here a web page URL retrieved from this particular website, then bracket close, or you can just mention digital object identifier, which is your DOI, right? Now let me tell you MLA style. You know, in paper one they don't usually ask about APA, but what do they ask about is MLA style, and it's very important if you are a student of humanities and all or history, they usually use this particular style, right? So let me tell you about it. Well, again we'll start with the format. Remember that the white, and there should be 8.5 and 11-inch paper, remember that, and it should be Times New Roman font, and the font size should be 12 point, and indent the first line of each paragraph like 0.5 inches. That is similar like APA style, right? And then MLA recommends using the tab key instead of pushing the space bar 5 times if you're not doing the. Otherwise what you can do, you can just select all document and then go to format, and then go to where this intent option, and you can put 0.5 to the left. So whenever you're starting new paragraph, 0.5 inches margin will be there, right? So and 1 inches margins in all the sides there should be, and of course double spacing is very important, and paragraph should be intended, and the first page should contain an MLA style heading, right? And let me tell you about if you are referring an author, how do you do it? So author's name is generally the first item in a citation, right? And the name of the author is always followed by a period. So if the source has one author, or place the last name first and add a comma and then the first, right? So, and if there is second author, what do you do? The second author's name appears in the standard order, like first name and then the last name. In previous exam they asked about two authors, and many of people, you know, made mistakes about putting this following the same order, like first last name and then the first name. But it should be only for the first author that the last name should come first and then the initial name. And but in if you are mentioning two authors, then their name should be, you know, follow like in order, like first name and then last name. I'll tell you with the example anyway, right? So this is about author referencing. We can also mention the example so you can understand better. And then if there is a title, what italics, remember that the title should be in italics, and you know, like a whole book or a movie or a website and even journal, that you have to put in italic format, right? And if there is a quotation mark, should be used when the source is a part of a large work, right? For example, a book chapter, right? Or a page on a website, or an article in a journal or newspaper. No styling is required when describing a source without its title. Okay, so that is also important that you should remember, right? Now next we have like container references. Suppose this refers to the larger work in which the cited source appears. For example, a chapter can be a part of a whole book, right? A page can be a part of a website, and an article can be a part of a journal, right? For example, you can see here like a gaze theory in psychological study, which is in quotation mark, right? And then the journal name, Journal of Psychology, which is in italic. So very important that you should remember before citing that. Anyway, then if we are if we have like other contributors references, then what you do, like those who contributed are listed right after the container title and are always separated by comma, right? So suppose use of description like translated by and then comma, directed by and comma. Remember that these should be in quotation also. Let me tell you one thing here. um, Latour Bruno, right? Last name, then the first name. Remember to put full stop, not comma, right? Then the politics of nature, how to bring the sciences into democracy, right? That is a title, which is in italic. Then full stop, translated by Catherine Potter. Same order is following, right? And then the publisher, Howard UP and comma, and then 2004. Right, and then next we have like version number, publisher or publication date. Let me tell you with the example, then you'll understand. Like we talked about, right? Potter, comma Michael. The full name is like Michael Potter, right? So what we did here, last name comes first, then the first name, then full stop. Then we have what? The name of the book, like competitive strategy technique for analyzing industry and competitive, right? And then what we do, full stop, then the second edition, then comma, then the publisher name and comma, and the publishing date, right? And then if there is number, in the case of journal article like volume 3, right, or magazine number 35, or TV show, so like, or TV show like season 3 or episode 7 are often numbered. And publisher, what happened, the publisher element is always included in book and movie citation, very important. And then the publication date, so the publication year should always be included when it is available. If a researcher or investigators also knows the month and day, they can mention that also. Let me give you the example of publication date. Suppose 11th February full stop in 2019. Very important to remember that. Then we have like location references, right? And what is that actually? Suppose there is a book chapter. Then chapter page range also like 120 to 134 that you have mentioned. And then the web page like URL without the HTTPS colon, that should be not there. Extension like example www.nerdschool.in. You don't have to mention HTTPS and colon and double slash, right? And this can be mentioned. And if you're mentioning journal article, then there should be DOI number with HTTPS or a stable URL, right? So suppose this is here like full HTTPS colon double slash and then the DOI number, right? And a physical object or live event, suppose you're mentioning that, so the city and location of the event, like example business center comma New Delhi, if there is any place, physical place, right? Or the museum of tribal art comma Kolkata, right? So I hope you understand this. And let me tell you the example. Suppose you're citing a book, right? So author's last name, right, like usual, then the first name full stop, then the title of the book full stop, then the edition comma publisher comma, and then year of publication. Like here I mentioned one of our books like Sharma comma Ankit dot, then easy handbook on cultural studies in India, quick guide. Then we have full stop, and if this is the second edition, we have mentioned that, and then comma publisher name and the publication date. Very easy, right? And suppose you're citing a journal here, so what do? Author's last name first, then the first name, and remember in quotation mark there is the article, title of the article. Suppose here this Vladimir Androv wrote the article about the evolution of European model of professional sports and finance in what, where, Journal of Sports Economics. So what we did, we put his last name first, then the first, then in quotation we have put the article name, and then we have put that Journal of Sports in italic, which whatever the journal is there, right? Then volume 1, right? And then we have put the number, edition number. Then if we knew the month, so we have mentioned September, and then full stop 2000. And of course we have put page range here, like 257 to 76, and then we have put our DOI number with HTTPS. So I hope you understand this particular stuff, right? And suppose you're citing a web page, right? What it is, author's last name should be there, then the first, then the title of the website, and the name of the website also. Like suppose here, like Sharma, Ankit, full stop, and there is an article called How to Tackle Poverty in Growing India, and where it was published, which website, How to Grow Big, and it was published in 10th April, 2021. And then I have mentioned what the website, right? So that's how you should. Suppose you are citing a newspaper, right? So again, here what happens, last name first, then the first name, then the title of the article, and then the newspaper, right? So for example, you can see here, like Popkin, Gabriel, full stop, global warming could unlock, which should be in quotation mark, then where it was published, which newspaper, the New York Times, in Italy, when, date, and then full stop, and 2020, right? And then we have given the link, right? So that is all about that thing. And we have other references like Chicago notes itself, which is not quite important because in exam they don't ask, but for your reference I have mentioned here, and who knows, they might ask, right? So for that, so this method is kind of very common in humanities, you should remember, and it is the latest one, is 17th edition Chicago manual of style, and it is primarily where it is used in humanities. For example, you can see here Jeremy Best, we have mentioned, right? So Best's last name should come first, and then the first name, full stop, then what is there, the full title in quotation, and then where it was published, Central European History 47, and then we have mentioned in bracket September 2014, and so, and then we have mentioned the link, right? So in Chicago author date style, if it is a date, then you can mention that. For example, you can understand this, there is an article and it follows the same. So, and then at the end we have like the Harvard system, and the Harvard system is usually used in economics and business stuff, right? So this is also, this style used like across various discipline in UK universities mostly, and Harvard style is defined by different universities and does not have a single definitive style guide. So for example here, Hoffman, then M, and then bracket date, then the title, and then where it was published in italic, then there is page number, and then we have DOI number, right? So guys, that is all about thesis writing, dissertation writing, and also we talked about different types of a reference style, right? So in our next session we're going to talk about application of ICT in research, and also we'll talk about a research ethic, quite important session, and that will be our last session in research aptitude. And isn't it wonderful, in 10 videos we have finished every single stuff about unit 2, which is our research aptitude. So I'll see you in our next session. So bye bye and have a good day.